Titch Miller wore glasses with elastoplast pink frames and had one foot 3 times larger than the other. When they picked teams for outdoor games, she and I were always the last 2 left standing by the wire mesh fence. We avoided one another's eyes, stooping perhaps to retie a shoelace, or affecting interest in the flight of some fortunate bird, and pretended not to hear the urgent conference. Have Tubby, no, have Titch. Usually they picked me, the lesser dud, and she lolloped unselected to the back of the other team. At 11, we went to different schools. In time, I learned to get my own back, sneering at hockey players that couldn't spell. Titch died when she was 12. These provocative, powerful, and almost poignant words are from the poem Titch Miller by Wendy Cope. And this is taught in most English-speaking countries across the globe in primary schools. This poem particularly is used to kind of instigate and welcome conversation around bullying in schools, and also things like unfairness and just nasty kind of comments. What's interesting about this poem is that we're not even sure that the people who are in charge of picking teams in school actually realise how soul-destroying it can be to not be picked for one of those teams, to be constantly rejected by your peers. Now, I can assure you it is soul-destroying because I was one of those, and I'm going to tell you my story in a moment. It can be really hard being a child sometimes in school. When you unpick that poem, and indeed unpick our lives as children, as adults, we're always going to be good at something. Those people in school that are drawing pen on people's arms end up going to be those tattoo artists. Those people that are singing in the back of the class, completely ignoring what's going on, are bound to be famous singers. We all have the ability to excel at something. But why do we end up focusing on all those things that we end up failing at or have a failure attached to it? If I was to give everyone here a piece of paper, and don't worry, I'm not going to do it, but if I was to give everyone here a piece of paper and ask you to write down all the things you're bad at and all the things you're good at, I guarantee you, I would put a bet on it that you will spend all your time putting all the money and things on the things you're bad at. We would make that list really long, we would ruminate over it and add to it as the day went on. The good list would stare at you blank. You might put 1, 2, or 3 little things on it, but mostly it will remain blank. We end up focusing on the things we're bad at, and we take for granted, nearly get complacent about all the things that we're really good at. If I put it differently, I'll pose a question to you. Why is rejection a bigger motivator than just acceptance? Why do we carry those things around us that really make us feel that we're not good enough? It can be really, really hard when we're in this kind of place. So what I want you to encourage you to look and listen when you're hearing this today is to confide and perhaps conquer some of those thoughts that we're having so we can free ourselves up to be that best version of ourselves. And it's a concept known as self-actualization, where we really accept who we are. So here's a little bit about my story, and we all have one. I was what we'd call a sickly child. Back in the 80s, I had chronic asthmatic. I was a chronic asthmatic. Multiple inhalers, many doctor's visits, any kind of sniff of dog or cat hair or overexertion at a kind of class party, I was in hospital. I was convulsing. I had severe asthma. As a result, I was not allowed or enabled to go to PE, physical education in school. So I was not allowed. I had a bag with a note in it that always said, Fiona cannot do PE. She is not able to do it. So when everyone else sweated it out and had fun, I used to sit at the back of the classroom and I'd be writing a book, reading poetry, scoffing crisps, you name it. But I was doing everything but having fun with the others. And I pretended everything was fine, this was my life. But it wasn't fine and I wasn't okay. Other episodes of childhood, I'll give you an example. At Halloween, everyone had fancy face paints on and these glamorous costumes, and I was stuck in a black sack from the supermarket. Now, the reason I was stuck in a black sack from the supermarket is A, if anyone knows anything about asthma, the worst thing you can do is get wet or get damp from this Irish weather. So my mother put a black sack on me. I would come home after Halloween trick-or-treating and there'd be a dozen eggs on my back because I wasn't fast enough to run because of my asthma. So that was a passage of right for a good couple of years, that black sack. I should frame it really at this point in my life. And that was Halloween. But fast forward kind of into teenage years, my friends were really into getting fit, and every kind of activity was going for a big walk or going up a mountain or something. And I used just to pretend I was busy. I said, you know what, I'm going to read a book, I'm going to write something, I'm going to watch a movie. I buried myself in academia, which I was really good at, and that would have been on my good list to excel. But nobody knew what was really going on inside me when it came to exercise. So fast forward to 18 adult years, I grew out of asthma, as every single doctor I had visited speculated. They knew this would happen, and I grew out of it. One would think, yes, joy, the asthma is now gone. But the downside was I was left with this complete and utter aversion to any form of physical exercise. I had a fear of exercise. It is possible. I was allergic to it. Now, I'd walk, I'd do a bit of yoga, a bit of Pilates, those kind of relaxing things, but nothing that would get me out of breath. I had a fear of getting out of breath, because anytime that happened, I thought I was going to die. It was like breathing through a straw most of my life. So here was me now, an adult, and I had struggled with decades of burying this thing about exercise. Nobody really knew. And I was prone to weight gain as a result. Because I wasn't exercising, I was always the one who carried those few, or maybe more, extra pounds, because I was not exercising and I was eating. That was the thing. I had to have a balance, right? So that was happened. So a couple of decades passed. And when I hit 40, which wasn't too long ago, I completely had one of those epiphany moments where I said, do you know what? I just don't accept this anymore. I do not accept my fate. I do not accept that this is going to be part of me, that I'm going to be the one who's carrying extra weight and is not able to exercise when everyone else is off having fun. Every single holiday I ever went on, when I went off canoeing or off hiking, I was stuck in the hotel room, often with a bottle of wine. Wasn't too lonely. So we had all these things happening. So the monumental turnstone of 40. And I said, okay, I am going to tackle the biggest fear when it comes to exercise, hiking. Now, most of you will be able to go off up the Wicklow Mountains or anywhere in Ireland or beyond at any stage, at any weekend, and it wouldn't take a stripe off you. For me, this was my kryptonite. This was my weakness, my dirty little secret that I've been hiding from everyone for a very long time. So hiking was the thing that I chose. And I said by Q1, March 2023, I was going to do that hike, and this was going to happen. So I got myself involved in a hiking group, Safety in Numbers. I was definitely not going to do this on my own. And I told two people, the hike leader and one of my best friends who knew about this and was a real support bringing me on this hiking trip. Now, it was 10 or 11K. Now, let's put this in context. I would have never walked 10 or 11K on a flat surface. And here was me doing a 10 or 11K up a very large mountainy hill. The night before the hike, severe anxiety. I was riddled. My stomach, my intestines were just going round and round. I was just disturbed. Every single thing entered my head. My inner critic was on fire. What happens if I fall down the mountain? What happens if I pass out? What happens if I vomit? What happens if everyone laughs at me? What happens if I'm last? Last all my life. What happens if I was last? I prayed that it was going to rain, and we live in Ireland, could easily happen. But alas, 8 o'clock the next morning, the sun shone, and I was off out in my €35 merino wool hiking socks that are very itchy, by the way. So I had the socks, I was all ready to go. We started the hike, and somebody had warned me, just to let you know, Fiona, the start is really steep. Now imagine saying that to someone like me. I was like, okay. So we started the hike, and I said, okay, I can do this, I'm fine. And all of a sudden, this unfamiliar yet familiar chokehold came across me. I couldn't breathe. And I really couldn't breathe. I grabbed my friend's hand and said, I can't do this. I just can't. So she very supportively says, we can go back down, we can wait till this passes, or we can keep going. And I said, you know what? I just don't accept this. I don't accept this as my fate. I have to do this. This is something I really, really want. In life, we're going to get circumstances and situations all of the time. Anything can happen. The more older we get, the more things happen. We must accept, or we must do something to change. If we accept something, we are truly at peace. We have found inner peace, and it's dead and buried under the bed. If you cannot accept it, then you have to do something to change it. That's a change of behavior. It's a change of, any kind of way of thinking of something or an action. But you cannot stay in that middle piece, which I have coined the circle of despair. And it's a real place, and I spent decades there. That circle of despair in the middle where you're not accepting and not doing anything to change is like a vortex. It's like a hamster on a wheel. It's like water going down a drain. You're going nowhere, but you're not accepting or changing. You're negative. You're giving out to yourself all of the time. So it's getting out of that and doing something. So I dug deep on that hike and I said, I am doing this. Kept going. Went up. This happened at least 4 or 5 times, my poor friend. This happened at least 4 or 5 times. But what was really interesting was the more it happened, the easier it got. And I also opened up my eyes to see, you know what? Everyone else is out of breath. This is normal. About 3/4 of the way up, those fast greyhounds that were ahead of us in the group were on their way down. I was still on the way up. And one of them turned around to me and said, Fiona, you might as well just give up now. It only gets worse from here on in. Now, nothing made me run up that mountain faster. It was like she put an action-pack rocket on my back. When someone says you can't do it, and they were half my age, I said, I am doing this. I ran up the mountain. And I made it to the top. I made it to the top. And I made it back down, which is also very important. I made it back down, and I did it. So I felt like the noose was finally off. The shackle was gone. The vault door was broken. Self-acceptance. I can do these things. I was able to do it. So my cross to bear on my back was all about exercise. But we all have these blockers. We all have these barriers that are always going to be there unless you make that decision to accept or change. For some, it could be confidence. For some, it could be public speaking. It could be getting married. It could be accepting yourself, setting up a business. The list goes on. We all have blockers, but we have to put that enabler in front of it to make a change. I did this hike for me and only for me because I did not accept my fate and I wanted that inner peace. And I found inner peace that day on the mountain. And it was only a small mountain, by the way, it sounds very big. But it's self-actualization, that's what it is. And Abraham Maslow, who was the famous guru of motivation, once coined that term, self-actualization. And self-actualization is all about finding inner peace and truly accepting yourself for who you are and accepting those around you. When you accept yourself, you have arrived. You are unapologetically and authentic yourself, and you accept yourself. And that was a missing jigsaw piece my whole life. And that picture is whole now. It's there. And I feel like I've arrived in that place. So what I would ask you to do, listening and watching this today, is, again, go back to your thing. What do you want to confide? What do you want to confront and conquer? Wouldn't you just love to see that gone, whatever that is? A couple of tips to share with you that helped me on my way. Number 1, the timing has to be right. Know your why and why now. I tried to tackle this in the past before, but it just wasn't the right time. I have a beautiful 5-year-old daughter who I wanted to be a role model for, and she was certainly spinning me on because I couldn't run after her. That was a problem. I don't want to be that person. So know your why. It's going to be different for everybody, and know what's the right time. The second thing is you have to have a support system. I am notorious for going alone. Dirty, deep, dark secrets, not telling anybody. Asking for help. You will go further and higher than you've ever gone before when you've got a support team in place. Number 3, reframe your emotions when you need to be. So for me, that night before the hike, on the hike, all of those things, I had anxiety. I had kind of like negative anticipation. But what you can do is reframe that to a lesser negative emotion. So for example, on my hike, instead of being so anxious, I said, is there a tiny bone in my body that might be a little bit excited with this challenge? And I'm a very determined, self-motivated person. So yes, I swapped the emotion. Emotional swap out. Number 4, and this is the really important bit, is I refused to accept who I was. I know I needed to change and I wanted it so much. And number 5, you'll see a backpack here and you're probably wondering, what is that? In this backpack, there is things like water. There is things like protein bars. There is also, I think there's a sock at the end of this. Yes, there's a sock, my hiking sock. It has been washed. But what I want to show you with this bag is that there is many things in this bag that you would take on a hike. But the most important thing in that bag was me, my life experience, my grit, my resilience, my determination, my attitude, my whole life came in that bag. Every single day, we wear a backpack. We dig deep, depending on what's happening in the situation, to find out what we need to use. Do I need a bit of determination today? Do I need a bit of challenge today? Do I need a bit of peace today? We pack everything in that backpack. So on that day, while this came with me, and it's a very small backpack, big rookie mistake, by the way. It's not a child's bag. I brought that hiking. I would not be bringing it again. But it's small. But we pack ourselves into our backpacks every day. Dig deep for what you need to get where you need to go. This is me on my hike. One of them. I'm now a hiker, would you believe? I've done more than one. I have a few stripes there. I cannot begin to describe the feeling on that mountain. I just cannot begin to describe it. The dead weight and decades of everything that I had suffered with terms of rejection and failure were just gone. They fell off me on the mountain. I was that schoolgirl back in school again, just like Titch Miller's poem. But this time, I wasn't last. I was first. Thank you.